Open up the door, it's Dave!
Who?
Dave! D-A-V-E!
Dave?
Right, man, Dave.
Dave's not here.
I thought I'd take a couple of minutes today and talk about some EV news that I found kind of interesting and that I hope you find relevant and kind of interesting in the Tesla space and talking about EVs in general. So first off, I wanted to talk about Tesla. Now, Tesla is in an interesting state right now, and one of the things that's going on is this problem of Elon Musk not being focused on the car company and being focused on other activities. And so investors are getting a little bit nervous, and Tesla's stock has dropped fairly significantly as a result of that. And they're asking him to either go back and focus on Tesla again, or to let someone else be the strong advocate for the car company, just to change the way they think about it. So there's someone there always promoting the car company. So he's got a decision ahead of him. Which way he goes, who knows? But I think it's interesting that as the CEO of a publicly traded company, investors are getting nervous, the board is getting nervous, so it's only a matter of time before he has to choose either to continue to run the car company and kind of forget about some of his other interests, or let someone else take the helm and continue to push the car company forward. And as a Tesla owner, I have to say that I'm a little concerned about the fact that, sales are down and, you're seeing some interesting things happen as a result of that. Now, that doesn't mean sales are bad, and it doesn't mean that their service centers have any problems, and it doesn't mean that they're not working on the cars the same way. Nothing about that. This is just about the stock price and how the company is being run right now, or perhaps not being run because his attention is elsewhere. So it's interesting to see how this kind of plays out. Now, to Tesla's credit, they figured out that they're going to get the tax credit again next year. So they'll have $7,500 available again starting next year on the 2023 models that they'll be selling off. So it'll be interesting to see how the company actually responds to that. As far as we know, it'll be the full $7,500 on both the Model 3 and the Model Y. The Model X, I'm not sure what they have in store for that one. I don't think it's currently available in the 2023 model, but it might be at some point. So we'll stay tuned on that one. But apparently, there's enough of the product that's being made here in the United States that it will actually qualify for the $7,500 tax credit again. Now, this is still very fluid, and no one is entirely sure which cars will or won't, or how much will be available in the tax credit. But presumably, Teslas will be available for that again. We'll have that full access to that full $7,500. So hopefully that works out. Now, in the short term, what Tesla has done is they said, we have an inventory of 2022 cars, and we'd like to meet a goal of so many cars sold to be able to meet our demand and make sure that the stockholders are happy with the number of cars that are being sold. So what they're doing right now is they're offering $3,750, about half of the tax credit, in an actual credit to the purchase of the car. So if you purchase a car between now and the end of the year and you take delivery of it before then, you can actually get $3,750 off of a Model 3 or a Model Y, which is a great deal if you're in the market for one. And in fact, I have to say that I actually did consider moving up to maybe a new Model 3 or potentially moving to a Model Y, because I know that this car that I'm in right now is worth somewhere over $30,000 in depreciated value at this point, and maybe worth as much as 35-ish, so somewhere in that range. So let's say 30 off the back of the envelope. So if the new car costs, it's about $46,000 for a new Model 3. So, you take 30 off of that, it's $16,000, take another $3,000 off. You're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 to $13,000, give or take a little bit, for an upgraded version of the car that has all the latest electronics, would have higher mileage on it, so it would go closer to 275 miles versus the 200 that I'm able to go today. Of course, it would have all new components in it. It would have the new computer system, and they've upgraded the standard autopilot to include some of the features that I'm missing in my standard autopilot. So, all of those things considered, it might actually be worth it. And given the fact that the warranty is up in June for me, it might actually be worth it to go ahead and make the investment of another $13,000 and have a newer car. I'm not going to do it. My wife and I talked about it briefly, and it's not the right financial decision for us at this point, but certainly it was tempting. And to step up to a Model Y, the Model Y starts at about, I think it's about $10,000 more than the Model 3, give or take. So we'd be looking at, another $20,000, $23,000 to step up to a Model Y. Yeah, that's a lot of money to put into a car. I don't think I would consider that at this point. But, you know, the trade-off to a Model 3, it's certainly a possibility. It's appealing anyway because they put the discount in there. Now, I may look at it again when they actually come around and they have the tax credit again. Maybe I can take advantage of the tax credit next year, and it might be worthwhile for me to do it at that point. But for now, I'm going to stick with my car. I really like it, so I'm going to stick with it exactly as it is. I just thought it was interesting how Tesla is kind of doing some things with their business, and things continue to evolve in some ways, and they're trying to find the best way to market their cars and make sure that people are interested in them. They still have the largest market share, but other companies are starting to nip at their heels a little bit more. You're starting to hear GM is putting more cars in the marketplace. Ford is really ramping up production of their electric cars. The F-150, the F-150 electric, that is, and then the Mustang Mach-E. Those are really making some inroads and nipping into what Tesla is able to do. And this is a really good thing from the EV market space, where we have more cars available to us that we can look at. Now, on the other hand, you still have Toyota. Toyota is an interesting case in this because they keep talking out of both sides of their mouth. They keep trying to make electric cars. They made this BZ4 something, BZ4B or BZ4R. I can't remember what the designation was for it, but they had this car that they created, and it was sort of a RAV4 that was fully electric, and they had it in Europe, and they had it a few other places where there was a limited number of them out there, and they really didn't succeed all that well. They just didn't work out. The cars were really not that well made. There were some issues with them, and it looks like it's kind of a flop in some ways, and they won't be bringing it to other markets anytime soon. And meanwhile, you hear executives from Toyota saying, oh, there's a silent majority that believes that battery EVs is not the way to go. It's not going to be the future. We're going to stick with that, going to stick with gas cars. To which I say, why would you stick with gas cars? I'm not saying that battery EVs are the way to go either. They may not be the ultimate answer, but certainly right now, the technology is at a place where they can have success in the marketplace. Of course, the caveat is we need to make sure that we're doing something with the batteries once we end the life cycle of the cars. So we're recycling these batteries in some way. We can't just throw them into landfills. So that's important to remember that there's still that piece to the puzzle that has to be worked out. There are companies working on it, but we need to get better at how we deal with the cars in that case and the batteries. Also, one of the other cars that's been nipping at the heels of Tesla is the Prius, which is a plug-in electric hybrid, so a PHEV. And these cars, they're interesting. They say that it may be the most complete battery car, and I put that in quotes because it has it's like a battery that I want to say it's a really small battery. It can get you, I don't know, like 30 miles or something. So it's a very small number of kilowatt hours that you can put in this battery. Now, as I've talked about in the past, the problem with hybrids in general is that you have two engines, you have two drivetrains, you have two sets of things that can go wrong with the car. And what you get in return is higher gas mileage. So it's still a gas car that gives you more gas mileage, which is nice, don't get me wrong, but it's something that car manufacturers should have been doing anyway. They should have been improving on the gas mileage with this sort of technology and these ideas all along. You shouldn't have to pay more for a hybrid car to get you something that you need to extend the mileage that you get. Now, the benefit to the companies that produce the hybrids is that they get some tax credits from the federal government because they're creating a battery-operated vehicle, because the wording is vague and it's sort of, they don't really define up what it is. So these hybrids are easier for them to make because they're essentially making the same drivetrain and making a car that is a gas-powered car and adding in this other electronic components to it in this small battery that then allows them to go further. So they're getting something more. They're actually charging a premium over the gas car, and they're making a car that goes a little bit farther. So you get the benefit of better mileage. Don't get me wrong, that's a very positive thing. But they're getting a bigger benefit because they're getting a tax break from the government. So it's sort of a hacky thing that they do, and I'm not sure that it really is worthwhile. Yes, you get better mileage, but why not go ahead and slip up to an entirely electric vehicle? And I know not everyone's ready to go to an electric vehicle, so I'm not suggesting it is the ultimate answer, but as you think about what you want to do and how you want to adopt into the electric community, if you think that you'd like to get into it, I would suggest you go and test drive a couple of electric cars. Go look at them online, check them out, see what you think. I got to tell you, the first time I got in this car, I was like, wow, this is really amazing what it can do. The way it felt, the way it drove, the fact that I didn't have to turn it on. When I first got in this car, I was in the driver's seat just like this. I had the salesman sitting in the car next to me, or I guess he's not really a salesman. He's the sales associate, but he's not really selling you the car because the car sells itself. And I get in and he goes, okay, I've already turned the air on because it was a hot day when I got there. The air's already on, we get in. And I say, he goes, okay, go ahead and put it in reverse. And I look at him and I go, but don't I have to turn it on first? Where's the key? What do I have to do? And he goes, no, it's already on. We're in the car, it's on. It's so quiet, it just throws you for a second. And then, so the car's on, you would just start adjusting the mirrors and you do everything, and then you go ahead and put it in reverse and you start going. And there's something so cool about that, the way it works. It does take a little getting used to that first time that you do it. But after you've done it once, it's kind of like, this is really amazing. And you don't think back twice about it. Okay, charging, that's a whole other story that I'll talk about in other videos. I'm going to do some more videos about charging specifically because I've got some more things I want to talk about there. But you know, the charging aspect of it is actually pretty easy, and I would argue easier than getting gas. I'm going to just put it out there. I'm going to say it. In fact, the other day, I was driving my wife's car and she asked me to stop and get gas for her. And I pulled into a gas station and I inadvertently, I don't even know how I did this, I pushed the wrong type of gas. So I was paying more for a gallon of gas than I thought I was going to. And I noticed it after 2 or 3 gallons, but I was like, well, why was that so hard? I had to put in the credit card and I had to wait for it to authorize. Then I had to take the gas pump out, select the style of gas I wanted, put it in the filler tank, the smell, everything else. Then I put it back and I started again. You have those moments when you think to yourself, it's so much easier to just pull into an electric, into a station, plug in, and then just sit there and wait for it for a few minutes. There was no hesitation about that. I didn't have to swipe anything. I didn't have to tap anything. I didn't have to use my credit card. It's already attached to my account. It's just easy. I plug in, I go on my way. And that's true of some of the other kinds of EV charging stations that are out there as well. Some of them will recognize your car. Some of them you just have a little key fob that you tap against something and that's the end of it. You don't have to put in a credit card and authorize it and whatever other things you have to do. It's the subtle things. Anyway, that was kind of that piece to the puzzle. So I found that really interesting. And the other thing that I thought about Toyota was quite simply that they're still all in on hydrogen. And I have a lot of doubts about hydrogen as a fuel source for cars. It's a great idea, and conceptually it's really good, but I always kind of go back in my head, and I know hydrogen is safer than this, but I always go back in my head to what happened with the Hindenburg and the Hindenburg disaster, which was dealing with highly compressed hydrogen inside the airship that then exploded.
7 million cubic feet of inflammable gas is being carefully maneuvered towards her hangar, when suddenly...
Hydrogen is a great element that's highly available, and maybe in the future there's a way to harness hydrogen in a simpler way that then becomes more efficient and we can do more with it. But Toyota is going all in on hydrogen and saying that's the future. And I'm not convinced that it is, at least not for now. Maybe it is in the future. Maybe there's a better way to do it and just consume, water or take in moisture from the air. Maybe there's some way to do that, and it can collapse it down and just take the hydrogen and make it a fuel source. Or maybe you just fill up with water and you go from there. But in any event, the idea is I don't think we're there yet, and I think Toyota is saying that this is the way of the future. I think they're being a little premature in what they're doing. Just my opinion, of course, and my opinion is worth about nothing. So, that's just something I was thinking about when I started thinking about their hydrogen solution. Now, there was one other thing I wanted to mention, and that had to do with what was going on in Switzerland. Switzerland proposed a law that would limit EV charging and would kind of reduce the amount of EV charging that was out there and how much your EVs could be used, under very specific circumstances. Now, unfortunately, the news media got a hold of this and ran with it and took off with it. It's draft legislation. It's still, very much in debate about what they want to do with it. The news media ran with it as Switzerland wants to ban EV cars, which is not the case. That isn't what Switzerland was talking about. And also, they kind of ran with the piece about the reason they want to ban EV cars is because it puts too much strain on the network that's distributing electricity. And I've heard this same argument from other people in our country and other countries around the world, where we talk about, oh, the strain on the electric grid, it's a real problem, it's going to put too much strain. We can't possibly have electric cars that are going to consume this much energy. I'd just like to remind you how much energy a car consumes. My car has a 60 kilowatt hour battery in it. So that's it. 60 kilowatt hours. So the maximum amount of electricity I can put in is 60 kilowatt hours. That's it. That's all it takes. And on an average day, I'm using about 4 kilowatt hours of battery, which is really not that much. So on an average day, I'm consuming 4 kilowatt hours. Now, I'm an exception. I'm an outlier. I don't drive that much. But even if I drove 10 times as much, I'd be spending 40 kilowatt hours a day to drive my car. Consider that electronics out there. The electronics we have, your TVs, your LED TVs, they consume a half a kilowatt hour per day when they're off, because they have to maintain their electronics and do some things with them. And they can consume anywhere up to 3 or 4 kilowatt hours per day, something around that range, when they're on. Think about that in comparison. Air conditioners that are becoming more prevalent as we look at the world warming, more air conditioners are getting installed in more places. Air conditioners consume enormous amounts of energy. If we look at the national averages for how much energy is consumed in kilowatt hours for different things, we can see that an electric car is somewhere in that range of about 4,000 kilowatt hours per year. And then we look at heating, furnace and space heating, and air conditioning. They're at the top and the fourth item down. And we could reverse them if we live in Florida, but you get the idea that there is a significant consumption that happens between those two things. So electric car charging really isn't so great as compared to those. I always like to think when I hear a headline like that, I'm like, what do they mean Switzerland wants to ban? Well, it doesn't even make sense to me. And then I stop and think about it, and you read the whole article and you realize there's a lot more going on. It's not about banning the electric cars. You think about what they're saying when you read that headline, and the headline catches your attention. But when you read the details behind it and you really get into it, you realize that what they're talking about, what they're drafting up in their legislation, is in an emergency situation where the power grid is under great strain for some reason, because it's very hot or it's very cold or there's an emergency of some kind. They may have to restrict how much energy gets used. It's essentially the rolling blackout idea that you hear from different places like California or New York, when they have to have rolling blackouts because the energy consumption goes up. Now, one thing I can tell you is here in the United States, we've been improving our power grid over the last decade or so. It continues to improve. All of these power companies, they're looking to improve their power grid. Power companies are in the business of making money, of course. That's the bottom line there. They produce power, they make money from producing that power and distributing it to you. So they're in the business of occasionally and periodically upgrading the power grid, because if they have to have a rolling blackout, that means that they have less revenue coming in for some period of time, and they have upset customers who then make things difficult in different ways. We know inherently that there are problems with the power grid. The power grid was put in 100 years ago, and it's been upgraded ever since. But now our power consumption has gone up dramatically through electronics. Think about all the devices you plug in at home. I have computers, I have phones, I have TVs, I have coffee makers, I have all these things in my house that consume some amount of power every single day. Yes, we're using better LED lights and we're doing some things more efficiently, and we even got better air conditioners than we had 10 years ago, but we're still using power. So we have to consider that we're using the power, and the power company knows that, and they want to continue to provide the power because they're making money on it. So they want to upgrade the system to make it better. So they will continue to do that. In the short term, it may mean that there's some outages or some other issues or some things they have to do to make it work, but it will get better. We'll continue to get better, and we will have better power service and have things that happen as time goes on. And there you go. That's my story for today. I just wanted to talk about a couple of EV things of interest to me and just wanted to share those with you. And as always, have a great day.
What's your point, David?